name's Brendan O'Sullivan, a Toastmaster from Brisbane, Australia. Welcome to my Toastmasters World Tour podcast. Please join me as I travel virtually around the world and chat to Toastmasters from different countries and all walks of life. Let's explore! For this episode of Toastmasters World Tour, we're zooming around the world virtually, from Ireland to Sweden to USA to Sri Lanka to Canada to New Zealand to South Africa. Like Santa, miraculously ubiquitous. I have a special edition of Toastmasters World Tour. In perfect timing for pending district competitions around the world, I have 3 Toastmasters evaluators from 3 different continents: Europe, Oceania and Africa, all competing in the Toastmasters World Tour Global Evaluation Contest. We have Samut Kumble from District 95, representing Europe, Nethmi Gala from District 112, representing Oceania, and Tandwefika Tshabalala from District 74, representing Africa. They are about to compete in their districts, the highest level the evaluation contest goes to in Toastmasters. The world-class judges are from North America and Asia and have all competed at the highest level. Our judges are: Harriet Tinker from Canada was a semi-finalist at the 2024 World Championship of Public Speaking. Ravi Udawala from Sri Lanka was a finalist at the 2024 World Championship of Public Speaking. And Luisa Montalvo from USA was the 2024 World Champion of Public Speaking. Anthony Garvey is the test speaker for this contest. He was the 2023 Toastmasters UK Public Speaking Champion. It is his speech that will be evaluated. At the conclusion of official Toastmasters competitions, competitors only find their placings. They never get any feedback. For this online competition, the judges have agreed to give feedback to give both the competitors and this podcast's audience valuable insight. The hope is that it will benefit all those competing in Toastmasters evaluation contests, and most immediately, those about to compete in the upcoming district competitions globally. I hope you all find this extremely useful. To get the most out of it, I suggest using this as a practice run yourself. Pause the podcast after the test speech and give yourselves 5 minutes to write an evaluation. Then listen into the other evaluations and compare. You can also practice being the judge of the evaluators by pausing for a minute after each evaluation and writing down your judging score and then comparing your judging with the judges here. Normally there is just placings awarded at the end of the contest, but to make it easier to follow and fresh in mind, we are going to have all the judges' feedback after each contestant. The 5 minutes pauses the evaluators had and the 1 minute the judges had have all been edited out for the sake of podcast continuity. Best of luck to all competing. Welcome everyone to the Toastmasters World Tour Global Evaluation Contest. I have a recording of my test speaker, and we're going to follow pretty much the process that's done in a normal evaluation contest, where we hear the test speaker, which is a 5 to 7 minute Toastmasters speech. And then there's 3 of you. We'll draw cards and we'll have an evaluation speaking order. The 2 that aren't evaluating will go in a breakout room where they can't hear the other person's evaluation. The evaluation will be the standard 2 to 3 minute speech. And we've got our timer, Rafik. We'll have a minute's silence for the judges while they make their notes. And now we'll have Anthony Garvey's test speech recorded in the last episode and played back during the competition.
Come to the edge. We might fall. Come to the edge. It's too high. come to the edge. And they came, and we pushed, and they flew. I was 15 years of age when I first read those words by Christopher Logue. I had asked my dad for advice on how to win the heart of the most beautiful girl in Ireland. Her name was Helen, and I was afraid to talk to her. My dad asked me to read the poem I have just recited for you. Later on that evening at our school disco, I spotted Helen across the crowded dance floor. Spurred on by the words, I began to edge nearer. Our eyes seemed to meet just as Flashdance started to play. First, when there's nothing but a slow growing dream that your fear seems to hide deep inside your mind. As I edged nearer, I noticed out of the corner of my eye, my best friend Fergus was also walking towards Helen. Then I realized she was looking at him, not at me. I stopped in my tracks as the two of them held hands and started to dance. Come to the edge, climb onto a ledge, more like it. But looking back, I realized how important that experience was. Helen may have chosen Fergus, but 10 years later, Fergus chose me as best man at their wedding. And later that evening at their wedding reception, I got to meet my wife for the very first time. I was 35 years of age and I had just failed my driving test for the 8th time. My dad sent me a press clipping about Cha Sa-soon from South Korea. She had failed her driving test, not 8 times, not 80 times, but 800 times, and was still trying to pass. At the bottom of the page, my dad had added the words, remember, come to the edge. It was the boost I needed. I reapplied for the test, took extra lessons, and on the day of the exam, greeted the examiner warmly with a firm Toastmaster-styled handshake. And just 1 short hour later, I had failed my driving test for the 9th time. It was the worst exam of the lot. I went the wrong way round a mini roundabout, jumped a red light, and worst of all, reversed into a small bush outside our local garden centre. Come to the edge, mow down a hedge, more like it. But looking back, I realized how important that experience was. Thanks to the press clipping and the words of the poem, I left the exam centre that day, not despondent, but determined. And 6 short months later, I passed my driving test on my 9th attempt. 2 years later, to the very day in South Korea, Cha Sa-soon passed her driving test on her 960th attempt. I was 45 years of age and I was on my way up to Dublin to visit my dad in hospital. He had gone in for a minor operation and I took with me the book of poetry he had given me as a young man. I wanted to tell him about the positive impact it had had on my life. 1 hour into the journey, I got a call from my sister and I pulled the car over to take it. She told me that my dad had had a heart attack. They had tried their best to revive him without success. As I sat helplessly in the car, I took the book of poetry by Christopher Logue and read Come to the Edge aloud. There was not a sound to be heard apart from the distant murmur of the car radio. When I had finished, I closed my eyes. Through the darkness, on the car radio, I heard something I had not heard for over 30 years. First, when there's nothing but a slow growing dream that your fear seems to hide deep inside your mind. 30 years ago, my dad gave me a book. He taught me to live life to the full, to have a go, to try things out. If you have a dream, if there's something you'd love to achieve, but you're just too scared to try, then I have one piece of advice. Come to the edge, and who knows, you too may fly.
Without further ado, Samuk, when you're ready, you have 2 to 3 minutes evaluation.
Come to the edge, we might fall. Come to the edge, it's too high. Come to the edge, we pushed and they flew. What an interesting statement and how a great way to start. I came to the edge too very recently. I joined Toastmasters only a couple of months ago, but then I was very scared to participate in the evaluation. My friend pushed me to the edge and it was not scary and I flew. It was so wonderful to hear Anthony speak about things which I can relate so much to my personal life. He spoke about the fear and insecurity of what we have, a common problem that most of us in the world have, and it was so much nice, so amazing to relate to. He brings us the power of 3, where he speaks about his 3 different timelines, when he's 15, when he's 35, and he's 45. When he's 15, when he hears the words of Christopher Love for the first time, he walks up to the girl that he likes, the girl that he loves. The feeling of that excitement, followed by the feeling of disappointment to see her choose her friend. But then, the positivity that he brings in by saying that he was the best man in their wedding tells us how to look at everything in a positive way, although it doesn't go in our way. That tells us how to embrace the edge and how we must believe that we have to fly. And then he also brings in the element of humor by saying that his future wife failed his driving test for 900 times. I can relate that too. I have been trying to pass my driving test for the last 1 year and I haven't done so far. It was a great thing to relate to it as well. But then he moves on when he's 45, when he's driving his car. He gets a call only to hear the news that the person who gave him the words of wisdom is no more. But then it is also a fact to note that the same words of wisdom that his father passed on to him was the one which took him out of a possible grief. This is a very interesting and very prominent and very powerful speech that Anthony has given us. I am sure his body language, his usage of stage would have been fantastic, and I really miss watching him live instead of just listening to him. The only thing that I might have liked a little more is when he was talking about his father. Maybe his voice could have been a little low, showing his sorrow. Apart from that, I think it was just a wonderful speech with a great structure, giving us the power of 3 with 3 examples of how he started, how he embraced it, and how he made a part of his life the advice that his father was giving. And also reminding us by the end of the speech that come to the edge, do not fear, and you will fly. Thank you.
Well done, Kamuk. So we'll have a minute's silence now for the judges. First of all, timer, was there any time disqualifications?
I'm afraid it will be one. One speaker went up to 3 minutes and 32 seconds.
Ah, that's hard, isn't it?
Yes.
It's a better lesson to learn here than it is in your actual district finals. So it's a bitter pill to swallow. I've been there. I was also 2 seconds over in one of my contests. Didn't make that mistake again so far. Anyway, I probably will make a mistake again. But anyway, you'll still get the evaluation. So Louisa, when you are ready, we'll have your judging breakdown and feedback for Samuk.
I'm going to preface my evaluations with the fact that I do not sugarcoat anything. I give my evaluations straight the way I see them. And I do this because I want the evaluator to become a better evaluator. That's my whole goal. Please don't take anything personal. Samuk, you started at the very beginning and you used your own personal story. Oh, he talked about this, but I joined Toastmasters and I did this and that doesn't help the speaker in any way talking about something you did. So to me, that's not, just leave it out. Then you said something, in your evaluation. Anytime you talk about yourself, don't talk about it because it does the speaker no good. You did say power of three, but then you came back and said power of three. So you said that twice. You only needed to say that once. You said, I can't pass my driving test again. This does no good on the speaker being able to be a better speaker and give a better speech. So just summarize the speech. To me, all you did was take his speech and instead of having 5 to 7 minutes, you put it into 3 minutes. So all you did was, to me, say the speech again. I was waiting. You only had one recommendation. To me, it wasn't an evaluation. It was a summary. That's my evaluation. I'm probably finishing before the green light even goes on. So now, because I don't want to get disqualified as an evaluator, I'm going to keep talking until the green light goes on because I don't want to lose just because I didn't keep talking. Again, I can say this again. Don't use any of your examples out of your life. I felt it was a summarization and you only gave one recommendation. We have to keep in mind that we are giving evaluations so the speaker can get better at giving speeches.
Ravi, when you're ready, let's hear your evaluation of Samuk.
Right, Sumuk, first evaluator. So I'll start off with some of the strengths that I saw you as an evaluator, Sumuk. First of all, the tone and technique. I think even the ballot says you've got to be empathetic, you've got to be friendly, you've got to have that warmth. I think you had that, Sumuk. So well done. That's a good quality to have as an evaluator. And in terms of providing strengths to the speaker, generally, when you say out a strength, you should cover the what and the why. I think you had both. You had 3 whats, 3 strengths, and also you told us why you feel them as strengths. For example, humor, you were able to quote a humorous line, and even in the power of the 3 stories, you were able to quote those 3 stories. So you covered the whats and the whys in terms of strengths. So those are the 2 positives that I saw in your evaluation today. A few points for improvement that you can consider, Sumuk. The first is, as the first evaluator, as Louisa mentioned, you kind of repeated the speech. So you repeated sometimes line to line, which is something that you need to avoid because you're evaluating the speech, the speech and not the content per se. And you mentioned something like body language may have been good. Now, if you don't see something for sure, I mean, let's not comment on it because you're not sure whether the body language was good or not. So that is something that you could have avoided. And in terms of recommendations or the weaknesses, you gave just one. So in a normal evaluation, I think we have ample time for 5 points altogether, but you had 4. So try to have at least 5 points so that you score more on the analytics part of it. And I think your summation was non-existent. So maybe you ran out of time. So that's something that you got to work on so that you have enough time for a summation as well. So yes, you had a couple of strengths. Your tone, your technique was good. You covered the whats and the whys in terms of the strengths. What you need to avoid is repetition of the speaker, and also try to avoid commenting on something that you didn't see, and try to have a summation. All the best, Sumuk.
Okay, Harriet, so when you're ready, can we have your judging and feedback for Samuk Kumble's evaluation?
For the sake of not mispronouncing his name, I'm not going to say it again. His speech was, his presentation was well presented. Things that I really liked is his voice was good and was very clear to understand what he was saying. So that's important when you're judging. What I noticed when he was presenting his speech, he talked a lot about the whole entire speech. Like he went on too deep and highlighted a lot of things about fear and security. He talked about the power of three, and he got really detailed with what he was saying, which can be good. And then the second thing, he talked about humor, and then also the phone call. So all these things were good. When you're doing an evaluation, areas of the positive side, you don't want to spend too much time on them. You want to give 2 examples and focus on the areas of, like when you look at the judging, the judge's guide, there's the recommendation is usually has up to 30 points. Now, if you're spending a lot of time telling us the good things, you are taking away from your recommendation. And there was only one recommendation that he gave, and it was very quick. It didn't really have an example on how the speaker can improve in the future. It was very quick. And then the other thing, when the speaker was done, when he was done, he did not do a summation. And on the judge's guide, summation is 15 points. So literally get 0 there because there's no summation. You don't want to leave things that's an easy one to do. Just say in summation, because sometimes some judges might not hear you. So you always want to say in summary or in summation, because it clearly says here on the judge's guide. So it's so important to say all those things. And the technique here is also 15 points. So the speaker was inspirational, motivational. So there you get really good points there. So the biggest one, I would say, recommendation, and the analytical side there, the speaker lost some points there. Because I'd recommend, don't tell us all the good things, you spend probably maybe a minute and a half saying all the wonderful things that the speaker did. Great. I'll recommend 2 things when you're doing an evaluation, and then spend a little more time on the recommendation, giving us step-by-step on how you recommend, how the speaker can improve, and summation. But overall, good presentation, considering they couldn't see the speaker. But I also noticed that they were trying to say, if you were staging, this is what I would expect to see. But you don't want to talk on things you can't see. Just talk on what you can hear. So well done, though. Well done. Speaks very well and very clear. So that's speaker number 1.
So that's a minute up. Nithmi, take it away.
So I had the pleasure of evaluating Anthony's very entertaining storyteller type speech this evening. And I'm going to evaluate this speech through the lens of structure and engagement, because really all we have to listen to is Anthony's voice and how is he engaging us through the story that he's telling. So I'm going to jump right into the structure part of this evaluation. The first thing I'd like to call out here is Anthony had a very compelling introduction and conclusion. Let's start off with that introduction, a literary triad, a quote from a poem, "Come to the edge, come to the edge, come to the edge." What a great way to hook the audience in. And what an impactful delivery he had. Great use of pitch and pause and pacing. And his conclusion had a clear call to action, wrapping up that central theme that he set up from the beginning. Come to the edge, take a chance, take a leap of faith. Now, one thing I would like to really commend Anthony on is running that central theme from start to finish throughout his entire speech. And he used a good amount of humor to do that as well, come to the edge, more like jump off the ledge or jump into the hedge. A great way to keep the audience engaged, laughing, but still keyed in to that central theme that he is pushing throughout his story. Now, one thing I think that Anthony could look at to push that structure even further, a small tweak really, is to perhaps define a little bit more that theme right at the start of the speech to set the audience up for the journey that he's going to take us on. He had that towards the end of his speech, and I felt like it would have had more impact at the start. So, for example, start off with that great literary triad, that great quote from the poem, and then go into 30 years ago, my dad gave me this poem, and it saw me through all the lows in my life, all the way from when I was in high school at a dance, and then go into that wonderful scene that he used. The next thing I'd look at here is vocal variety, and that was almost a masterclass in how to use your voice to keep your audience engaged, especially effective use of pause to emphasize certain things, and great use of pitch, like I failed again. Things like that keep the audience hooked and engaged and invested in the story that's being told. Now, one thing that I would encourage Anthony to do is take it even further. Some of the scenarios that he set up you could really push that humor even further. So things like seeing his best friend out of the corner of his eye, slow down a little bit more. And what did I see out of the corner of my eye? My friend going to my crush. What's going on here? Just dramatize the scene a little bit more, and especially because we can't see him, engage the audience through the dramatization of his vocal variety. Now, overall, a beautiful story with a great message, great structure, could just push defining the theme a little bit earlier on in the speech, and a little bit more pushing on the vocal variety to dramatize the anecdotes and the scenes that he had. But overall, a fantastic and engaging story with a great message at the end.
Thank you so much, Nethmi. We'll now have a minute's silence for the judging. Louisa, when you're ready, we'll hear your evaluation of Nethmi's evaluation.
I think a good evaluation is going to have the speaker walk away with, wow, that's really what I need to start doing. And Nethmi, you started out with, so I had the pleasure. First of all, you started with so, filler word. Then later on you said, so I'm going to, and then again you said, so I'm going to. Instead of telling us what you're going to say, just say it. There's no need to preface it. I know a lot of professors, okay, so today class, I'm going to lecture you on, don't do that. Just say what you're going to say, and that's it. You also did say, hey, you know what? You had a good hook. You had good use of pitch. You complimented the evaluator, which is good. That's what we're going to do. And it's called, the ham sandwich. You tell them stuff that they did good and then the recommendations, but then you come back and say, but hey, overall, great job. That's basically what it is. So once you got going, you did say good hook, good use of your pitch. You had good closing. You said commendation on the use of coming to the edge. So that was good too. But again, you're almost just repeating what the speaker already said. Now, what I really liked about yours was when you said recommendations, I would have started it differently. And then you actually told us, hey, this is what I think would have worked better. So that's good, because now the speaker's going, oh, maybe she's right. Maybe if I put it this way. And so that was good, because you actually gave a good recommendation. Then you said you take the scenario further, and I think we also gave a recommendation on that. So I liked it, but I don't remember your summation, and I don't know if you came back and said, but hey, overall, da 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 da. So I don't have anything written on that, but that's what I've got. I think you had a weak beginning, but then you got better, And then, like I said, I don't have anything for summation, so that's my fault, but that's my evaluation of your evaluation.
Ravi to evaluate Nethmi.
Right. Second evaluator, Netme. Netme, I loved the energy you have as a speaker. You were very lively, you were very motivating, and even as an evaluator, that's a great asset to have, right? Loved it. I also love the fact that you covered the what, the why, and the how, especially when you were giving recommendations. You just didn't say, okay, this is an area where you could have improved your voice. You just said that line with better vocal variety. So you showed us the how, which is very, very important because it's easy to say this is an area of improvement. But for an evaluator, you go one step further and say, this is how you could improve, which is really helpful for a speaker. And you did just that. Wonderful. And I love the summation. I think you had a complete summation, which kind of encapsulated everything that you had to say in your evaluation today. Wonderful. A few points for improvement, Netme. In terms of structuring your evaluation, I felt a bit of a clutter. Why I say that is you now generally you start with the strengths and you move to the areas of improvement. So what you did was you said structure, and within structure you had the positives, the strengths and the areas of improvement. You went to voice, and within voice again you had strengths and area of improvement. So for me to follow you, there was a bit of a clutter, I would say. I think a better way to structure your evaluation is finish off the strengths and then get to the areas of improvement so that for anyone in the audience, it's much easier to follow. Yeah, that's the only improvement point I had in your evaluation with me. So great stuff. I love the energy, love the motivating tone that you had. Love the fact that you covered the how as well in terms of providing recommendations. If you can have clear structure to your flow of thoughts and flow of points, that'll be a area for improvement for you. Thank you.
Now we're going to hear Harriet Tinker's judging and feedback of Nethmi Gala's evaluation.
Excellent. Now, the speaker here was great. Set it off saying exactly what she was going to tell us about the evaluation, how she was going to let us know how Anthony did. Talked about the structure and engagement. She said the introduction was very compelling and impactful. So enough time to talk about the areas that were positive. And then went in to talk about the recommendation, which I really liked because he was able to say what recommendation the speaker could improve on, like define the theme at the beginning so we can have a flow. So that's a really good recommendation for the speaker, and it will also make the speech more impactful. So she was giving us a recommendation, giving us what the impact would be, and an example of what that would look like. So that's something a speaker can take away and help the speaker improve the speech so it can be even better. And the other thing she gave was about vocal variety, and talked about when Anthony saw his best friend dancing with, the girl she wanted. I really liked how she said you could have used humor so that us as listeners can visualize that, like corner of your eye, look the volume up or low, so that we can have a feel. So that would have elicited in the emotions there. So I really like how she brought those two recommendations, and she would score really high because that's really good recommendation with examples, the impact and what it looks like. And also what I really liked is she did a summation of exactly what she told us and give a little bit of a summary saying this is what I'm recommending and this is what the good things I like. This is the recommendation in summary. So that was good. So she would score high points in all the categories, and the technique was good. She was very sympathetic and sensitive as well as motivational. So well done. The speaker did a good evaluation.
Okay, that's a minute up. Welcome back, Thendwefika. When you're ready, take it away with your evaluation.
Thank you very much, Anthony, for that wonderful speech. Come to the edge, we may fall. And my friend, I can tell you that you've come to the edge and you did not fall. Instead, you flew. Thank you for the tale you've told us about overcoming your fear and complacency, anchored in that quote that you delivered. Through your speech, I saw great things that I think you should repeat to make you a perfect speaker. And I saw one or two things that I think, if improved, would make you an even better speaker. I'd like to start off by telling you of some of the great things you've done. The first one is using personal stories. Now, the world is a very big, small place. And when we tell stories, it anchors us to a place and time that allows us to live as you have lived through that story. It makes it personal, therefore I listen better. You did that in 3 parts. You told a story about your night at the disco and overcoming the fear to approach the potential love of your life. You did it by telling us of overcoming the multiple failures of getting a driver's license. You did it by talking about your passion at your dad's funeral. All of those were indications and examples of where fear could have held you and that you overcame it. Tying back directly to the quotation you opened with. That was very good. The second thing that I think you did extremely well is closing the loop. There's a certain thing about human beings that like a completed task. A little dose of dopamine hits us when something starts and we are able to finish it. You did it in 2 ways. The first one, you opened up by singing that song that I might admit is before my time, but it was a great song nonetheless. And then you returned the song to the end in closing so that the golden circle is closed. That sounds beautiful to the human ear. Just to top it up, you all added a recital of the poem again. That is completing the golden circle. What are some of the things that you could have done better? Well, there's 2 specific things I'll talk about. The first one is on transitions. Think of a speech like a logical argument that starts off and argues a point and then joins it to another point and joins it to another to get to the end. You joined your points using the transition. I was 17 years old. And then when you went into the next story, I was 36 years old. That as a transition is hard to reach. It doesn't make initial sense as to the 17-year-old, where does it fit to the previous paragraph done? Instead, you might use a little bit more words and say something along the lines, that's why the next time when I was 17 years old faced with this, and then that transition is able to link the next statement to the previous one, allowing the users to follow well. The last thing is your use of language. Flash dance, roundabout, all unfamiliar to the modern generation and international speakers. Try using different languages, words. All in all, your speech was wonderful, and I think you did very well. Just be careful of international language, transition better, and I think you are on your path to being an international speaker. Thank you very much, Anthony.
Okay, we'll have a minute's silence for the judges. Okay, that minute is up. Louisa now evaluating Thendwefika when you are ready.
Thank you so much. And Robbie, you're so much better evaluator than I am because you point out the good and I'm just focusing on, okay, what I think needs to be improved to make the evaluator a better evaluator. And Wifika, sorry if I mispronounced your name. You had a great intro. I really liked it. I just put here great intro, what it was, can't recall. You also started off as a professor. I'd like to start off with, you don't need to say that. In fact, what I found with your evaluation was it was a little too wordy. If you only have 2 to 3 minutes to tell someone how to improve, you don't want to say things like, well, I'd like to start off with, and I think for you, I think one of the things you could have done better is you don't need to say all that. Again, I thought it was a little too wordy. The one point that you did bring up that was really good, and I hadn't realized it till you pointed it out, was you said the circle. You closed the circle. You started with this, and then you came back and you closed the circle. So that was really good. I really liked that. When you said I have recommendations, I don't know if it was just me. I have been up since 7 in the morning, which was, God, I don't know, 16 hours ago, but I didn't get clear on your recommendations. It was a little too confusing for me. Now, that might be my problem, not your problem, but it was good that you did give recommendations. The clarity on it, I'm not really sure. And then I don't know if you came back and said, but overall, great job or whatever. And if you did, that was great. But again, what I felt was you were a little too wordy. I like what you said, circle came back. You don't have to say all the other stuff, and I wasn't clear on your recommendations. That's my evaluation. Thank you.
Ravi, when you are ready to give judges feedback for Thandwefika.
Right. Thandwefika, I hope I got your pronunciation right. I loved how you started off your evaluation. When you're at the edge, you could fall, but the speaker didn't fall today, you flew. I thought that was a wonderful line to start with. You talk about motivating the speaker, and you did just that. Loved how you elaborate your points, Thandwefika. You, just like the previous speaker, you follow that structure of the what, the why, and the how. So you spoke about the strengths of personal stories, closing the loop, transitions, language, and in all those points, you covered those three elements of, what was your point, why you felt that was better, and in terms of recommendations, you covered the how part as well. Now, here's the biggest area of improvement for you. Your closing was rushed. I think that's because, as the first evaluator mentioned, you were too wordy. It's good to have a good elaborative language, but then again, it's a contest and you got to be mindful of the time. And your closing was way too rushed. I think you were able to just get in one recommendation, and that too was rushed, right? I couldn't get the last part of it. And the summation was almost non-existent because you had to wind up. So that's something to be wary of, managing time. So it's good to be elaborative, but be mindful of the time. That's the only recommendation that I have for you. Thank you.
So now we're going to have Harriet Tinker's judging and feedback for Thandwefika to Shabalala's evaluation.
All right, thank you. I'm excited to give evaluation on the third speaker as well. Very good way to present. Started off with just saying the theme, saying he was unique, he was a good speaker. So right off, it separates him from everybody else because of how he started off the speech. He stands out there. And then says what I'm going to say. I'm going to talk about the areas that he did well, and then areas that he recommended he could consider. So we talked about personal stories because they're relatable, and gave examples, 3 examples on what he meant by relatable personal stories, because we can all relate to it. And the second thing was about sing along. Said it was all kind of, at the beginning, he started off with singing and ended with singing. So that's what a good speaker does. Kind of like it's all like a full fold of a presentation. And then talked about areas of improvement, which would be the transition. Give an example. For example, he said, if you join it, we started with the age, and then you give an example of what that looks like. So it's good for the speaker to know what the speaker is, what the evaluator is recommending. So that's a good example. And unfortunately, I have to admit, I did not really hear the second recommendation, but I did hear it in the summation, which was good because it was able to, which is also another trick too, when you do a recommendation and you may not have been clear. So the summation brings it back and reminds the judges that, oh, okay, that's what he said. That makes sense. Or she said. So overall, very good evaluation, which stands out because the beginning is unique, because you want to always be standing out because the judges are listening to so many other evaluators. You want to stand out, and he did that. Gave examples, did the recommendation, and did a summation. So very well done. Good evaluation.
So now to announce the results of the Toastmasters World Tour Global Evaluation Contest. There was one time disqualification. In second place, Sumuk Kumble from District 95 representing Europe. And the winner of the Toastmasters World Tour Global Evaluation Contest is Tendwefika Tshabalala from District 74 representing Africa. Congratulations! Best of luck to all in your upcoming district finals. Thanks for listening to today's show. One of the key elements of Toastmasters is evaluations. This is how we grow and improve, both by encouraging comments for things we got right and points for improvement. We all learn and benefit from these evaluations, not just the person being evaluated, so any feedback in the comments is greatly appreciated. If you have a Toastmasters story you'd like to share or would like to be on the show, I'd love to hear from you. You can reach me at toastmastersworldtour@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.